بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. As to our followers, my dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah ta'ala, tonight is the final lecture for this trip concerning the adhkar, and throughout this month I had given the lectures and I did not give any time for the questions, and I had a lot of questions that came through, so we decided to create a link and send it out today morning, requesting from anyone who had a question related to the adhkar to put their questions. MashaAllah, we've had almost 100 questions that were sent through to us from here and from wherever around the world. And inshallah ta'ala, the idea is to answer as many as we can, prioritizing the questions that are related to the adhkar first and foremost, and then if there is time to answer the other questions that are on the Excel sheet, inshallah ta'ala, we'll do so. So we're going to get into this right away. We're going to begin with the first question, and this is a question coming from a sister. She says, when we do the adhkar right after Asr prayer, or do we wait for a moment and then do the adhkar? So when we're speaking about the evening adhkar, then we say that they begin after adhan al-asr. This is the evening time, after adhan al-asr. And it is better to wait until after salat al-asr, considering that between adhan and iqamah is a time to make dua, so you occupy yourself with that. So the best time for the evening adhkar is to start directly after salat al-asr. Naam, and you have all the way until salat al-maghrib. That's the preferred time. And then there is an extended time, and that is from after maghrib all the way until the end of the first third of the night. This is known as the evening time. So anyway, in this time would be an appropriate time. And the closer to the beginning of its time, the better and more effect it has on a person, and more rewarding. So the one who read adhkar al-masa straight after salat al-asr, this is better than the one who delayed it half an hour later, unless he had a valid excuse. Wallahu a'lam. Next question here also from a sister. She says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I really learned a lot from this course. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant you reward, and may Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all reward and acceptance. My question is, can we raise our hands as in when making dua, when reciting our morning and evening adhkar? That's a good question. So concerning the ad'iyah, the dua, the supplication that comes in the morning and the evening adhkar, then in this case we say we do not raise our hands when making these dua during the morning and evening adhkar. And that is because the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be committed upon these adhkar and dua of the morning and evening regularly. And there is no narration that would suggest that he raised his hand during these dua of the morning and evening adhkar. And so this is not only the time in which we don't raise our hand, but also when the imam gives a khutbah and the people are sitting and saying Ameen at the end, when the imam makes dua at the end of the khutbah, the people should not be raising their hands saying Ameen. Only raise your hand when the imam is making dua for rain, right? Also at-tawaf around the Kaaba, and when you're making dua and making tawaf around the Kaaba or sa'i between as-Safa wal Marwa, this is a moment for dua. You don't raise your hand in that when making dua. So these are exceptions. Otherwise, the standard general rule is that when a person makes dua, he is encouraged to raise his hand. But in certain places, we don't raise the hand. When reading the adhkar al-sabah al-masa and there's a dua in there, you don't raise your hand. Al-tawaf, al-sa'i, al-khutbah, unless it is dua for rain. These are exceptions. And even in salat, there is dua in salat. You don't raise your hand like this unless it was al-witr, wal-qunut, and you're making dua in that. You'll raise your hand. Now, so that's the answer to that question. Wallahu a'lam. The next question comes from a brother. He's saying, is it preferred for me to complete the La ilaha illallah dhikr 100 times between Fajr and sunrise and Asr and sunset? Or does the dhikr virtue remain if the same if I say 100 La ilaha illallah during the day and during the night? So here the brother he brought up a very good question, which is التهليل. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. Let's first answer, how many times is this said and where is it said? In the morning, in the evening? What is happening with this dhikr? Of course, this is a grand and a great dhikr. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned that it is said once in the morning, once in the evening. That is an authentic narration. There's another authentic narration, and that is the narration of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu anhu, that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would say, لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير, 10 times in the morning, 10 times in the evening. So now we understand from these two authentic narrations that specifically when we are speaking about the morning dhikr and the evening dhikr, then La ilaha illallah should be said once or 10 times, and in the evening once or 10 times. Then of course there is a narration of it being said how many times? 100 times. That is an authentic narration when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, anyone who says it 100 times, then for each time he says it, that is 10 hasanat added, 10 sayyi'at, 10 bad deeds wiped away, and it is equivalent to freeing 10 slaves, and freeing one slave, its reward is as though you have freed yourself from the hellfire. And the fourth virtue is that a person is given and granted protection from the devils, from ash-shayateen. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that such a person would be the best person on the day of judgment, except for the person who said it more than him. He would be better than him. However, you need to understand this very carefully, and that is that saying it 100 times, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, fi yawmin, meaning saying it 100 times is part of the day and the night adhkar, which is much greater and bigger than the morning and evening. So we have something called adhkarul yawmi wal layla. We have something called the dhikr of the day and the night. This is huge, this is big, this involves the whole day and the whole night. And then there is something called adhkarul sabah, adhkarul masa. So if we're speaking exactly about the morning and the evening dhikr, then La ilaha illallah would be said 10 times, 10 times, or if you like, one time, one time. And when we're speaking about 100 times, you have the whole day to say 100 times. You can say 10 times after Adhan al-Fajr, then you can decide to read Adhkar al-Sabah after Salat al-Fajr, and then after you finish, maybe when the sun has risen, you can say it another 20 times. After Salat al-Dhuhr, you can add another 20, that's now 50. Then you can wait for just before Al-Asr, say another 50. You have the entire day and the entire night to say it 100 times, right? So this is how we're going to gather between all these narrations of 1, 10 and 100. So basically saying it 100 is bigger. You've got a much larger window frame to say it, and that is the entire day and the entire night. Now, Wallahu alam. The next question here we have, this is a question coming from a sister. She's saying, do I strictly do the adhkar of the morning and the evening after finishing my prayer while seated on the prayer mat after finishing my prayer? Or am I allowed to conclude my prayer, get up, for example, sit on the couch and then do the adhkar? So this sister, since she's asking this question and she is at home praying Salat al-Fajr, then there is no issue, there is no harm in finishing your Salat, getting up, sitting on the couch and reading adhkar, the morning adhkar on the couch. But there's something to notice here. After Salat directly there comes adhkar after the prayer. So there is dhikr after the prayer, which is astaghfirullah 3 times, Allahumma anta salam, and the 6 adhkar that are to be said after the prayer. That it is better to remain seated where you are, not move until you finish them. That's better. Now obviously if you got up and walked away and did your astaghfirullah, that's fine. But it's better to sit down and to do them. Why? لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said, فإن الملائكة تصلي عليه ما دام في مصلاه. The angels will continue to make dua for the person that remains seated after his salat. So why do you want to waste this kind of opportunity? So you sit down, you say the adhkar after the prayer, and once you're finished, you can get up and sit wherever you want and continue your adhkar al-sabah. Now, the next question here, it comes from a brother. He said, can we get the summary of all the adhkar with the number of times that they should be recited so we can forward them to our family, inshallah? I can't do that. because we've already done that in a more professional manner. And that is, alhamdulillah, brothers in the UK have designed what I think is the best app in the world that combines and gathers all these adhkar in one place. The app is called Dhikr and Dua. Dhikr and Dua. It's found both on the Android and the iOS systems. Dhikr and Dua. And in Dhikr and Dua, you'll have all the adhkar there, the different types of adhkar, morning, evening, before sleep, after salat, and so on. And then there is a section called Our Publications. If you were to click on Our Publications and you scroll down, you can go to Daily Adhkar and you can download a pamphlet. The pamphlet is 2 pages. It's mentioning all the morning adhkar, the evening adhkar, and how many times it's repeated, and so on. Really beautiful, simple work, and an excellent layout to this app. And I've done with them an online interview. So if you get onto their YouTube channel, it's called Life with Allah. You'll find a 40-minute interview that I did with them online, explaining this app, going through it, how it's used, its benefits, its uniqueness, among other apps, and so on. And it's for free, walhamdulillah. And also, the adhkar that I've given you so far, and we've explained them, mashallah, the brothers have summarized the lessons and they have put them in brief points there as explanation. So now when the adhkar, morning adhkar, you open them up, there's an exclamation mark down the bottom, you can press it and it brings up a brief explanation about this dhikr. So excellent, and it really stands unique among all other apps. Now, so you can do that and you'll find what you need, inshallah. The next question here we have from a sister. She says, I experienced that one day I slept after Fajr, after saying my morning adhkar. But when I lay down in bed, I forget reading, or I forgot to read Ayat al-Kursi, Surah al-Nas, Surah al-Falaq. During the daytime, I felt as I was half asleep and half awake, and then an army soldiers entered into my room and I got paralyzed. I couldn't move for some time, but then I said Allah, Allah, and finally got out of that strange stage. What is this army of jinn entering my room that day? A concerned sister from Sweden. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to ease the affairs of the Muslims and to ease the affairs of this sister. First and foremost, we say that actually there's something I think here that it's important to highlight that she mentioned. So she said she had prayed Salat al-Fajr, read the morning adhkar, then she said she wanted to go back to sleep and she forgot to read Ayat al-Kursi. The first question is it a sunnah to read Ayat al-Kursi before sleeping during the day, the sleep of the day? We know that before you sleep, the sleep of the night, it is recommended to read Ayat al-Kursi. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. But is that same sunnah applicable for the sleep of the day? Let's say someone during the day after al-Fajr or after al-Dhuhr wanted to sleep. Is it sunnah to read Ayat al-Kursi? Here, al-ulama rahimahumullah differed. There is difference of opinion. والصحيح والله أعلم, the more correct is that whatever of the adhkar was mentioned specifically for the night sleep, then it is only for the night sleep. And whatever was mentioned as a dhikr for sleeping, then this includes both the sleeping of the day and the sleeping of the night. So, for example, we have مثلا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, he would say, من قرأ في ليلة آخر آيات من سورة البقرة أو كما قال كفتاه في ليلته. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, whoever reads the last 2 ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah in one night, they would be sufficient for him. So now we understand from that narration that this is a dhikr specific for the sleeping of the night, not the sleeping of the day. There's another hadith in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that إِذَا أَوَى أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى فِرَاشِهِ, if a person wanted to go to his bed to sleep, then he should take his blanket and shake his blanket, and then he should say بِسْمِكَ رَبِّي وَضَعْتُ جَنْبِي وَبِكَ أَرْفَعُ فَإِنْ أَمْسَكْتَ نَفْسِي فَارْحَمْهَا وَإِنْ أَرْسَلْتَهَا فَاحْفَظْهَا بِمَا تَحْفَظُ بِهِ عِبَادَكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. In this narration, there's nothing mentioned about sleeping at night. The hadith simply just said if you go to bed, you want to sleep. That could be the day, that could be the night. So you need to look carefully into these narrations. If it said that this is a dhikr said at night for the sleep, then leave it for the night and don't say it for the day's sleep. And if it did not mention the night sleep, it just mentioned asleep, then you can bring it during the day and during the night. So based on that, Wallahu A'lam, that Ayat al-Kursi is mentioned for the night, right? And that the shaitan would protect him until he wakes up the next morning. So that should be only said for the night. Wallahu A'lam. As I said to you, there is khilaf, and some ulama mentioned that doesn't matter, it's general. And that the word night was only mentioned because the majority of people sleep at night. So للتغليب, the night was mentioned because that's the majority case, that people sleep at night. But then they said that it could be said during the day's sleep. So Allahu A'lam, if someone did read it, perhaps there's nothing wrong with that. However, what I explained to you, it's probably best to just stick to that now. And then she's saying that there's a army of soldiers entering and got paralyzed. Allahu A'lam, Allahu A'lam. What we say is that a person should continue with his adhkar and not be distracted by these things. Because a lot of people can say that I said my adhkar. How come I saw jinn coming into me at night and that kaboos in where I'm being pinned down to the bed and I'm not able to move? And Allahu A'lam. This could be a trick from a shaitan, could be a test from Allah Azza wa Jal, a calamity to see your steadfastness and commitment upon the adhkar. Are you going to now give up the adhkar because to you it seems like it's not working? That's your test. So we say for a person like this, continue in your adhkar. Try to understand what you're reading. Sometimes people read the adhkar and they daydream. They don't understand what they're saying. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he did say that if a person reads the adhkar, does not understand and ponder over what he's reading, then the adhkar will have little to no effect on him. So perhaps this is where the problem is. There is no concentration, there's no khushu' when saying these adhkar. And this is the fight, this is the struggle with the believer every single day when he's reading the adhkar on the Quran. He wants his heart present, he wants to understand, and this is the entire purpose of this series, is so that you and I can understand these adhkar with a little bit more depth, so that we may attain this khushu' when reading the adhkar, and bi'idhnillah they can have some kind of effect upon us, a positive effect. Na'am, Allahu A'lam. Next question here, is coming from a sister. She says, what's the best way to remember the adhkar? I struggle because I read it off my notes and it makes me feel like I haven't done it right. Sometimes I read them after getting in the car or train because I will get ready. Is that okay? Allahu A'lam, similar to what we answered before, download the app. I think that's more organized than having them notes up and down and you lose them and you can't read them from that. Download the app and continue to read them from this app, because the app also has a function in which you can turn on notifications so it reminds you. And then you read them off the app until you memorize them. Once you memorize them and you get the hang of them, really good grip of them, then you can say them without the app. Wallahu A'lam. Now, next question, it's coming from a brother. He says, how can we be consistent with the morning and evening adhkar? I've answered this before. I answered it when we did the first lecture. I arrived here to Sydney, and that was with the lecture, Allahumma bika asbahna wa bika amsayna wa bika nahya wa bika namut. So if you review that lecture, I think it's part 12 in the playlist on YouTube, then you will get your answer. So it's a longer answer, I won't repeat that here. The next question we have is from a brother. He says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. He says, can I send salawat to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while on bed after reading my adhkar before sleep on Thursday night, because I'm not sleeping yet? So the brother is in his bed, he has finished the adhkar, and can he say, of course, there's no problem in saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad, whether it's on Thursday night or any other night. Now, lakin, if a person is preparing himself for the night sleep, it is best to read adhkar of the night. Once you finish the adhkar of the night before the sleep, then you can engage in as-salat ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Next question is coming from a sister. She says, could you please recommend the adhkar for best conduct, best manners? So there are dua that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would teach us that enhance and rectify a person's manners and character. From them is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu to say, Allahumma ahsin khuluqi kama ahsanta khalqi. O Allah Azza wa Jal, O Allah, perfect my character in the same manner you have perfected my creation. That's a dua. There's also a dua in al-istiftah when praying, starting the salat. It's a long one, but towards the end of it, وَهْدِنِي لِأَحْسَنِ الْأَخْلَاقِ لَا يَهْدِي لِأَحْسَنِهَا إِلَّا أَنْتَ وَاصْرِفْ عَنِّي سَيِّئَهَا لَا يَصْرِفُ عَنِّي سَيِّئَهَا إِلَّا أَنْتَ. This is a dua. This is an excellent dua. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say, Oh Allah, guide me to the best of manners. No one guides to best of manners except you. وَاصْرِفْ عَنِّي سَيِّئَهَا. And keep the bad manners away from me, because no one can keep them away from me except you. This is a fantastic dua. Excellent. This is dua Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for good character and good manners. Now, also Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal from bad manners. He would say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ash-shaqaq wal-nifaq wa su'il akhlaq. He would ask protection from Allah Azza wa Jal from evil, bad manners. And if you ask Allah to protect you from bad manners, indirectly you're asking that He bestow upon you good manners. Now, next question is coming from a sister. She's saying, which specific adhkar can I recite in the morning as I am sometimes in a hurry? Maybe this is someone that is caught up in a situation, they're in a rush, they're in a hurry for something, and they don't want to waste the opportunity of adhkar upon them. Alhamdulillah, it's an excellent question. And we say that the adhkar al-sabah, of course, it's better to say them all at the preferred time. But if you're not able to say them all, then at least something. At least something. If you say something, then you are considered from those who remembered Allah in the morning. And the most important of them is Ayatul Kursi. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ 3 times each. And add to that Sayyidul Istighfar. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك, due to the great virtue that it carries. And that is that one who says it in the morning and dies before the evening enters the paradise. Obviously he said it with certainty. And the one who said it in the evening and died before the morning, with certainty he enters the paradise. So if these 2-3 adhkar would be perfect if you were to say this when you are in a rush and you don't have the time to say them all. Now, the next question here comes from a brother. He says, Assalamu alaikum. Is it okay to read the first part of the adhkar and ignore the ones with high quantity of repetition? Okay, so pretty much the same. He's asking about the adhkar that are said in abundance, like La ilaha illallah 100 times, Subhanallah bihamdihi 100 times, Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illa wa alayhi tawakkaltu wa rabbul arsh al-azim 7 times. There is khilaf concerning that one. When we get there, we'll explain. But there are adhkar that 3-4 times, 10 times, and so on. So he's saying, can we just skip all the ones that are repeated and just say the ones that are 1 time each? There's no problem. There's no problem in doing so. But obviously a person wastes a huge opportunity of reward upon himself. And the suggestion is, don't make this a habit. So maybe when you have time, Saturdays or Sundays or any other day where you have actually time, sit down and say them all. The repetition, my brothers and sisters in Islam, there is wisdom in the repetition. The repetition is not the Allah just repeated. The repetition, it enhances a person's focus, his ability to concentrate, to absorb more meaning from that which he is saying. So such a question perhaps comes from someone that just sees the repetition as a burden. Why is there repetition? What do I benefit from the repetition? We need to understand the repetition. It's not just there without a purpose. From the greatest purposes of the repetition of certain adhkar is for your heart connects, for your heart and your mind to connect with that which you are saying, so that you can understand and ponder over these meanings. Now, so you can skip certain adhkar, there's no issue, but the better is always to say them all. Next question is coming from a brother. He says, Assalamu alaikum. My question is, since part of the morning and evening adhkar is to read Ayatul Kursi, and after Fajr it's sunnah to read Ayatul Kursi, do I have to recite it twice? That's a good question. I think we've answered this before. Adhkar al-Sabah, Ayatul Kursi should be read. And after Salat al-Fajr, from adhkar after the prayer, Ayatul Kursi should be read. So we read it twice or once? The ulama rahimahumullah, they have a very beautiful principle that will teach us the answer to this and many other things that clash like this. They said, إذا كانت العبادة من جنس واحد في وقت واحد تداخلتا. If a worship is from the same type and it's at the same time, then you can combine the intention. So what we mean, let's take an example, this example, and apply it to this principle. This principle is saying إذا كانت العبادة من جنس واحد. If the worship is of the same type. In this case, in the morning, there's reading Ayat al-Kursi. That's the type of worship, reading Ayat al-Kursi. And after Salat al-Fajr, the type of worship is reading Ayat al-Kursi. So it's the same type of worship. في وقت واحد, and it comes in one time. Yes, because adhkar al-sabah begins after Fajr, or adhkar after prayer begins after Fajr as well. Now you can combine the intention. So if you read it once, then it is permissible to read it once. And is it permissible to read it twice? Yes, of course it's permissible, and that is more preferred as an option, to read it twice. Once with the adhkar after the prayer. Once you're done with that, you begin with adhkar of the morning and you read it again. You can do that, read it twice or read it once. Allahu A'lam. Next question is coming from a brother. He's saying, Assalamu alaikum. Is it observed? It is observed that most morning adhkar are repeated in the evening. How does one differentiate which are only prescribed for evening? For instance, I use Husn al-Muslim app. Now this is simple, inshallah. Now we said, go onto the app, and the app has organized everything. Morning adhkar there, and what's to be said in the afternoon adhkar is there. But if you're asking in terms of how do we find this out, we find it out from the narration. If the narration mentioned that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would say this in the morning and the evening, it became morning and evening dhikr. Sometimes it's only for the evening. In the hadith it will say, he would say this in the evening, and then that's it. It is not to be said in the morning. Now, so that is simple, bi'idhnillah. Next question coming from a brother. He says, Assalamu alaikum. I have two questions. First, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a. Can we read this in the morning and the evening? This is now related to our answer of the previous question. This Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'an wa rizqan tayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbala, we said it's for what? For the morning specifically. So if you're reading it as adhkar al-sabah wal-masa, then it is only in the morning, you cannot say it in the evening. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not mention it's a dhikr of the evening, so you avoid saying it in the evening. And more specifically, we said that this is a dhikr for after Salat al-Fajr, right? And we understood the logic behind this because these are the three goals of the believer, and it is always best to plan your day from the early stage of the day. Now you know what you want to achieve throughout the day: beneficial knowledge, halal provision, and accepted righteous deeds. Now, so you do not say it in the evening. But if you wanted to say it as a dua, as a general dua in your salat and so on, there's no issue, there's no harm. But to say it specifically intending it as a dhikr of the evening, then no, there is no narration that supports this matter. The next question he's saying, Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduk, which is Sayyid al-Istighfar. I used to recite this every time I finish my obligatory prayer. Please, is this permissible? Okay, so he's saying that he says Sayyid al-Istighfar after the obligatory prayers. This is not permissible. It is not allowed. And this Sayyid al-Istighfar was not legislated from the adhkar that is to be said after every obligatory prayer. Rather, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا انصَرَفَ مِنْ صَلَاتِهِ إِسْتَغْفَرَ ثَلَاثًا. That's the hadith of al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah. That the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he finished his prayer, immediately he would seek Allah's forgiveness 3 times. Seeking Allah's forgiveness 3 times, meaning to say the minimum, astaghfirullah 3 times. And the maximum and the better way to say it is astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. That's it. And you do not replace this istighfar by saying, okay, you know what, the best version is Sayyid al-Istighfar, I'm going to say that 3 times. La. لأن Sayyid al-Istighfar specifically was taught for the morning adhkar and for the evening adhkar, not for after the obligatory prayers. If that was the case, then most definitely there would have been narrations that said the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did this. So we are not allowed to introduce into the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal something that is not there. So my brother here, you will only say astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh, and that's the best version 3 times, and then Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam, and you continue with the rest of the adhkar of as-salat. We have another question here. It's coming from a sister. She's saying, Assalamu alaikum. You mentioned the salat adhkar should be completed after fard salat. Do you mean, for example, Maghrib has 3 rak'at for fard and 2 for sunnah? Do I need to do the adhkar directly after the fard, or can we do them after the sunnah prayer? Shayyid. Even perhaps this question is coming from a lecture that I've given earlier about the adhkar that are to be said after the prayer. We did this lecture in Al-Umrah in Mecca when we were with the group there. And we mentioned that the adhkar after the prayer, the correct time for them is after the salat, the obligatory prayer, after the obligatory prayer, all the way until the adhan of the next prayer. You have all that time to say the dhikr. So now we prayed salat al-maghrib. The one who hasn't said the adhkar after the prayer, still now's the correct time. All the way until adhan al-isha. Once adhan al-isha is called in, khalas, done. You don't say adhkar after the prayer for that previous prayer. Except for 2 conditions. And that is that if a person was continuous upon his adhkar after the prayer, very regular and consistent, and he missed them in the correct time due to something he was preoccupied with and busy and genuinely missed them out, for such a person after adhan al-isha, he'll be able to say the adhkar after the prayer for al-maghrib. These are 2 conditions. What are they? If a person is consistent upon adhkar after the prayer, and he genuinely did not have time to say them after the prayer, and he only remembered them and had time after adhan of the next prayer, then he can say them. But if he's not someone that's consistent and regular, or he missed them because out of laziness, then in that case he does not make qada of those adhkar. Next question is coming from a sister. She says, is there any timing limitation for morning and evening adhkar? I mean, can we do later in the morning? And please share the authentic dua for increased iman and taqwa. Is there any limitation for morning and evening adhkar? We've answered this more than once. We've said the morning adhkar is from after Salat al-Fajr, the preferred time, all the way to the just before adhan al-Dhuhr. That's the accepted time for the morning. And the evening, we've already explained that at the beginning. And here it's saying authentic dua to increase iman and taqwa. Now, Hadith Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of the hearts, keep my heart steadfast upon your deen. This is most definitely a dua that increases a person's iman and taqwa, because if Allah Azza wa Jal grants you firmness upon al-Islam, meaning your iman is there, it's preserved, it's alive, it's increasing. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he also used to say, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wa tuqa. Oh Allah, I ask you for guidance and for piety. So you ask Allah Azza wa Jal for such. This is an authentic dua. Also, from the adhkar that we said, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a. Because if you ask Allah for beneficial knowledge, what is the result of beneficial knowledge? It increases a person's iman. So asking Allah for beneficial knowledge is a means in how to attain high iman. And I told you beneficial knowledge is 2 things. What is it? Authentic knowledge and knowledge that you act upon, you implement it. That's beneficial knowledge. If it's knowledge that's authentic and you don't implement it, that's called authentic knowledge. That's called ilman sahiha, not nafi'a. So if you ask Allah for beneficial knowledge, then this is a means in how one increases his iman and his taqwa. The next question we have here is from a sister. She says, can you recite the adhkar 1 time each, or does it have to be the amount of time stipulated? Some of the adhkar you have to recite 3 times or 7 times. Does it matter the amount of times, or would just doing it once suffice? So good question as well. So we have, for example, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. It's supposed to be said 3 times. Can a person just say it once and move on? In terms of permissibility, yes, there's no problem. But the reward is only given to the one who said it that many times, of 3 times, right? So even though it's permissible to say it once, but you've missed out on the reward of saying it 3 times. And the same thing goes to all the other adhkar. Now, so that's the situation here. And we'll add to that as well, is it allowed to say it more than the recommended prescribed time. If you're saying it more, that is not allowed. That's not permissible. So for example, as for all the adhkar, yani, after as-salat, we say astaghfirullah how many times? 3 times. Someone wanted to say it 4 times. Is that permissible? Not allowed. If he's intending that this is part of my adhkar after the prayer, it's not allowed. This is an innovation, and such a person is not rewarded for his doing, rather he becomes sinful. We need to stick to these numbers, need to adhere to these numbers. There is wisdom in these numbers. And so, Hasbi Allah, La ilaha illa hu, alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arsh al-azim is to be said 7 times, even 7 times. When we get there, inshallah, we'll explain the wisdom for why 7 times. But that's the idea, 7 times. There are adhkar that you can increase over the number that has been prescribed. Like what? Like subhanallah wa bihamdih. How many times is that to be said in the morning? 100. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. 100 times. Can I say it more? Of course I can say it more. Why? What's the daleel? What's the proof? Ahsan. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that a person who said it 100 times would be the best person on the Day of Judgment, except someone who said it more than him. So within this, there is reference to the fact that you're allowed to do it more than 100 times. And there are other authentic narrations that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say, whoever said it 200 times in the day. So there is space. There is flexibility in that in terms of adding to the 100 times. Now, next question here, it says, this is coming from a sister, she says, Assalamu alaikum, did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam pray upon himself like in at-tashahhud from Canada? What's, okay. I thought, طيب. Now, of course, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam prayed upon himself. Now, salat, he'd say, at-tahiyatu lillah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Also in al-khutbah, when he would deliver the khutbah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin. Now, he used to pray upon himself. The next question is coming from a sister. She says, can we recite adhkar on behalf of toddlers? Or can we modify the adhkar in dual meaning 2, or plural form to include toddlers, young children? Is there any particular prescribed dua parents can make for their children every day from sahih narrations? Okay, that's a good question. The answer to this is that we're not allowed to modify the adhkar of the morning and the evening. And we do not change the tense of the morning and the evening adhkar. The tense meaning we don't change it from singular to dual to plural. So for example, from the adhkar of the morning is Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afwa wal-afiyah fi dini wa dunyaya. Allahumma inni as'aluka, I ask you. This is singular. So you don't change this to say Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-afwa wal-afiyah. We are all asking al-afwa wal-afiyah. Allahumma astur awratina wa amir rawatina. No, it's got to be in the singular form. Has to be in the singular form. We've repeated this lesson more than once. We said that the adhkar, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would teach it to the companions like he would teach him an ayah from the Quran. So do not change nothing. You want to say in the plural form, make dua other than the morning and evening. When you finish the morning and evening, make general dua for yourself and include your family and your husband and your wife and your neighbors and whoever you want to include. But in the morning and the evening, you need to stick to the words. The other thing is, when a parent reads the adhkar al-sabah wal-masa, then if the parent is protected by the morning and evening adhkar, that automatically includes his children. It includes his children. Then from the adhkar is to say, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afwa wal-afiyah fi dini wa dunyaya wa ahli wa mali. May Allah, you ask Allah Azza wa Jal, grant me protection in my deen, in my worldly affairs, in my wealth, in my family. So you've included them when saying that. So if the parent is protected, the young children that don't know how to say the adhkar and they're still babies, they're also included in that as well. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would specifically seek Allah's protection for children, like Al-Hasan wal-Husayn, he would say, أُعِذُكُمَا بِكَلِمَاتِ اللَّهِ التَّامَّةِ وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ وَهَامَّةٍ. He would put his hand on them and he would seek Allah's protection for them from the evil eye and from evils and harms. So if you read that to the children in the morning before they went to school or whatever it is, then that's also legislated and permissible. Now, And I have a short video online that explains this. If you were to type children that cannot read adhkar morning and evening, what to do, you'll find about a 5-10 minute explanation on that topic. Now, next question is coming from a sister. She's saying, my apologies if this question has already been answered during the series. I memorized the morning and evening adhkar several years ago, alhamdulillah. But now I recite them in the order in which I learned them. Is there a specific order to be followed? That's a good question. What's the answer? Is there a specific order? No, there's no specific order. I mentioned to you in the introduction of this series that al-ulama rahimahumullah differed in how they arranged the adhkar al-sabah al-masa'. Some of them arranged them based on the ayat first, then the hadith. Some of them arranged them based on authenticity. So whatever was strong in Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim was put first, and then the rest were put underneath that. Some arranged them in terms of virtue. Whatever had the greatest and the strongest virtue was mentioned up above, and then everything else came down below. So it really doesn't matter. The order doesn't matter. You can memorize any order and then say it in the order that you memorize. The next question is coming from a brother. He says, in regards to the adhkar, whenever I do the adhkar, I play it on YouTube and I read along with the video. Is this permissible? Also, sometimes when I read or recite alongside with the video, my mind wanders off and I'll just be reciting along with khushu', without khushu'. Will I still reap the benefits, such as whoever recites dua will enter paradise, or will my reward be reduced for not having 100% concentration? May Allah reward you. May Allah SWT grant you goodness as well, my brother. The answer to this is, when listening to the Quran, when it comes to the Quran, listening to the Quran is a sunnah, right? Listening to the Quran is a sunnah, and reading the Quran is a sunnah. But when it comes to the adhkar, the sunnah is for you to say them, So it doesn't take the same ruling as the Quran and say that just like I listen to the Quran, I'm going to listen to the adhkar. Some people also fall into the same problem where in the Eid, they're driving in the car, they've got the takbir allowed in the car and he's driving. And he's listening to takbirat al-Eid. That's not the sunnah. The sunnah is not to listen to takbirat al-Eid. A sunnah is for you to say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. So do not confuse the adhkar with the Quran. Sunnah is to listen to Quran. The adhkar or sunnah is for you to say them. So the brother here is saying he listens and he reads alongside what he listens. Okay, so that's good. He's fulfilling the sunnah of reading these adhkar. So there's no issue in that. And he's saying then he's complaining about his khushu', that his khushu' wanders off. This is mujahada. You need to strive and struggle spiritually against yourself to remain focused in your adhkar. And everyone has a battle with that. So may Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all khushu'. The next question here, the brother is saying, some of the adhkar are considered weak by many scholars of hadith. Can you please clarify whether or not this is an issue? For example, Ayat al-Kursi and multiple other adhkar. Maybe he's speaking about Ayat al-Kursi after the obligatory prayer, because there is khilaf concerning reading Ayat al-Kursi after the obligatory prayers. Some ulama mention that is weak. But generally, let's answer this question. Of course, what do? Some adhkar are declared weak, some are declared authentic. And then if a person doesn't have a clue on how to manage these matters, he becomes confused. What do I do and what do I say? Let's first understand that al-hukmu ala al-hadith, ruling upon a hadith, whether it's authentic or weak, this among the ulama is known as mas'alatun ijtihadiyah. This is a matter of valid difference of opinion. And the matters in where there is valid difference of opinion, then it is only for the scholar of hadith to tell us whether this is authentic and whether this is weak. And us as general people, if we followed an authentic scholar that has immense expertise in the knowledge of hadith, and he concludes by saying, I grade this hadith as authentic, then it is permissible for the general people like us to follow that imam. Because we're not experts in hadith, and the chains of the hadith and what's happening within the chain. This he takes, this like Imam al-Albani rahimahullah, from his time until today, no one compares to him, right? They come out from time to time, throughout the years, throughout history, al-Muhaddithun. So Imam al-Albani is an Imam to follow in terms of grading of ahadith. Of course, Imam al-Tirmidhi is preferred over him, and as we get closer to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, their grading and their declaration of the hadith, whether it's authentic or weak, it should be prioritized over Imam al-Albani and others. If Imam Ahmad, for example, has a ruling on a hadith, I take that instead of taking those that came after him. If Imam al-Tirmidhi has an opinion about a hadith and says that this hadith is sahih, and then we have from the contemporary ones that said it's da'if, I'll take Imam al-Tirmidhi. And that's, whether you know or not, but that's what I've been doing in this series of adhkar. I've mentioned to you certain adhkar that have been declared weak by certain ulama. But my methodology in this was to say, okay, I'm going to put these ulama in front of me. I'm going to see who is closer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So the classical ulama, and who's coming later. So I put all their names and I've written them down on a sheet of paper. And so we're starting from here all the way back. Obviously towards the end we'll have Shaykh al-Albani, because they're the ones that are contemporary. Shu'aib al-Arnaut and others, Shaykh ibn Baz, rahimahullah, Mr. Scholar in Hadith and so on. Then I look, if I have a few ulama from here that declared it authentic, and those out, the contemporary ones, have said it's da'if, I'm going to take here. So I'll present it to you and I'll say it is authentic. And if the vast majority of those that are classic said a hadith is weak, and then we have from the contemporaries that said it's da'if, I perhaps would prefer this opinion and I would stick to this. So I had one methodology that I worked on, right? And I did not move away from that, bi'idhnillah. So the idea is, and I'm not saying that you have to follow him or him or him, as long as you follow a verified imam, and an imam that has expertise in the field of hadith and the science of hadith, khalas, no one's allowed to say anything too. That's fine. So the question is saying some of the adhkar are considered weak by many scholars. If you want to follow that scholar in his grading of the hadith, follow him in that, no problems, right? Of course you seek advice from your shaykh, from your local shaykh. Try to understand the situation a little bit more better. Maybe the imam, because no one's ma'soom, no one's free of mistake. Maybe that imam declared it weak, but it was actually authentic. And the vast majority that came after authenticated it. And had the imam himself known that the specific narrator in the chain was someone else, but he confused and mixed them up, maybe if he came back to life and saw his mistake, he would change his grading. So you cannot be rigid as well. You need to understand and seek advice from those that can understand the work of al-ulama. And then if you followed that kind of advice, inshallah, you should be in a better position. Now, طيب. Next here, the brother, he says, Assalamu alaikum, I am 11 years old. My question is, when you say the morning and evening adhkar, what does it do to a believer's heart? What are the rewards that I say for it? What are the rewards that I get for saying it? Jazakum Allahu khayra. May Allah Azza wa Jal increase your knowledge, increase you in beneficial knowledge, increase us all in beneficial knowledge. Al-adhkar, it protects. Shield, called it shield. It protects from evil, from al-fitan, from corruption. It draws the heart nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal. It allows the heart to be always aware of Allah Azza wa Jal, away from heedlessness. It revives at-tawheed in the heart. That's exactly what al-adhkar are. And this is what we need every morning and every evening. It's not enough only in the morning. You need it again in the evening. This is what it will do to the heart. Oh, mashallah, and I want to make a comment here that this is an 11-year-old boy asking the question. And this is very important. It's very important that you involve your children from as young as 8, 9, 10, 11, even 7 to engage in knowledge and ask questions and take answers and so on. It's very important. Sahaba radiallahu anhum would accompany their children to the circles of knowledge. And you have some narrations, the narrator will say, my father told me such and such. Or he says, I attended a gathering with my father and I heard the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam say so and so. You'll find this plenty in the books of Hadith. I attended with my father and I heard the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Look at the benefit of that. And يعني, teaching these children al-aqidah and the correct belief in Allah Azza wa Jal is a must. Teaching in the big stuff is a must. يعني, look at the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu. He says, كنت غلام. I was a young boy. ايش غلام؟ غلام يعني 8, 9, 10, 11, somewhere there, that's a غلام. He says, then the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to me, يا غلام إني أعلمك كلمات. Boy, I want to teach you words. احفظ الله يحفظك. Safeguard Allah and Allah will protect you. Meaning do Allah's commands and Allah will protect you. إذا سألت فاسأل الله وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله. If you ever ask Allah, ask Him alone. And if you ever seek help, then seek help from Allah alone. Although, look at this. It is almost an 8-year-old kid. Now look at this. He says to him, وَعْلَمْ أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك وإن اجتمعوا على أن يضروك بشيء لم يضروك بشيء إلا قد كتبه الله عليك رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف. 8-year-old kid. Why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying to him, boy, listen up. If the entire world gathers together to harm you, they will not be able to harm you except with that which Allah Azza wa Jal has written for you. Oh, the question is, this young boy, who's even thinking of harming him? Why is he even telling him this? Today, if you got a young boy, 8-year-old, and I told him these exact words in front of people, what would they say? What are you talking about? Why are you telling him, Al-Ummah, if they're going to attack him and they're going to come after him, and why are you scaring him? This is what we would say. Like Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam took this young boy and puts this aqidah, this belief into him from when he was a ghulam, when he was a child. And you know, if you reflect over this hadith, you find, subhanallah, how much are we in need of this hadith, especially today, right? A lot of people are concerned, LGBT, and they're attacking our kids. Isn't it good for the kid to know this now? Isn't it good for him that we teach him and say to him, listen boy, this entire world has a filthy, dirty agenda. They want to get to you. They want to get to your sexuality. They want you to become deviant in your sexuality. But you need to learn, my boy, my son, that no one will harm you. No one will harm you in any aspect of your life if Allah Azza wa Jalla has not decreed that for you. How perfect is it? Now it makes sense. But this has always been the attitude of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with his companions. Doesn't matter how young he is. The younger the better. You teach him these kind of meanings. Yes, teach him the sharr of al-ummah. It's going to come after you. And if it did come after you, nothing will harm you, bi'idhnillah. Teach these are big words. Like, and how did these companions turn out to be who they are? Then the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had instilled with them a strong aqidah from the beginning. From the very beginning. Na'am, wallahu alam. This is a good question coming from this young child. We have another question here. It comes from a sister. She says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question is, if someone suffers from a tight jaw and has problem with pronunciation while carrying out the morning and evening adhkar, would their adhkar still be valid? What should one do to keep the morning and evening adhkar valid in such a case? May Allah Azza wa Jal grant you shifa and grant all those that are ill from among the Muslims shifa. If someone has a tight jaw, cannot open and close in a normal manner, or anyone that is sick and just literally cannot raise his voice with the adhkar, then we say that the adhkar are to be said on the tongue. The tongue must move when saying the adhkar, must move. It's not enough for them to cross the heart. The mouth must move when saying the adhkar, the tongue. You don't have to produce noise, just like the recitation of as-salat. You're moving your tongue with al-Fatiha and you're producing no noise. So the adhkar could be said in such a manner. And if a person is extremely sick to the point he can't even move his mouth and tongue, Allah does not burden a soul beyond its capacity. As a result, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah as best as you can. If the best you can do is pass them by your heart and recall them from your heart, then that's the best you can do. Otherwise, if you're able to move your tongue, even having your mouth closed and just moving your tongue, then that's fine. It doesn't put any pressure on the jaw or anything. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us shifa. Now, next question is also coming from a sister. It says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question to you is, if a person reads her morning and evening adhkar and still gets harmed by something, does it mean she did not read the adhkar correctly? Allahu alam. Could be, could not be. Could be a test, could be a calamity from Allah, could be Allah Azza wa Jal testing this person's commitment upon the adhkar. Is he going to leave them now that he's seen no special effect or protection upon him? Everyone is in his own circle, but the advice is continue to read these adhkar. And when we say, and I did mention this last time, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afiyah, oh Allah, I ask you for protection and well-being. And let's say a person that day woke up and he was ill and sick in his body. So what does he asked Allah for protection, and to him it seems like Allah did not give him well-being and protection. Then we said that ulama rahimahumullah would say, in that case, you asking for protection could now shift and mean protect my iman during this calamity. Give me protection in my iman during this illness that I'm going through. Because this is really where you want protection. In your iman. This is what you don't want to lose. A person can lose a limb, but he can't afford to lose his iman, not for a second of the day or the night. So if Allah Azza wa Jal granted a person protection in his iman, then most likely, wallahu alam, the dua has went to that, wallahu alam. That's the same thing. Now, it goes around the same concept. We're almost coming to the end here. We've got another question. This question is coming from a sister. If I do my adhkar every morning and evening, then something harmful afflicts me, how should I take it as a believer? Should it make us stronger in iman and trust that it is good for us? What if it rocks my iman? So sister here is asking, she's saying the adhkar of the morning and the evening, but then she is afflicted with something harmful. How should the believer take this? Should it make us strong? Should a calamity make a believer stronger in his iman? Should it? A calamity should make a believer stronger in his iman. Why? Is it the calamity itself that strengthens your iman? What is the thing that strengthens a person's iman during a calamity? Huh? Patience. Ahsan. You need patience. But that's not the thing that's strengthening the iman. Okay, let me share with you an ayah and we'll take this from the ayah. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about a huge calamity that the companions faced. Big calamity. And we're talking about an army of 10,000 people from Mecca coming and wanting to annihilate and destroy the believers and kill them once and for all. Imagine that. That's a huge calamity. Allah refers to it to the point where وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرِ. Allah Azza wa Jal would describe the emotional state of the Sahaba, that their heart has reached their throat. They're about to die from fear. That's how huge the calamity was. But you know what the result was? Allah Azza wa Jal said when they were faced by such a huge calamity, they said, هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. They spoke to each other, they said, say this? This is exactly what Allah and His Messenger promised us. Didn't they promise us this? Isn't that right? In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said, وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا. Did you people assume you're going to enter the paradise and you haven't been tested like those before you? Poverty, famine, war affected them all. So that means Allah had promised the believers, you'll be affected by بَأْسَاءُ وَضَرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا. Now Allah said, وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا. This entire calamity only increased the believers in iman and increased them in submission to Allah's command. The question is, what increased them? Not the calamity. What increased them is the fact that they saw Allah's promise come to life. This is what Allah promised. Hey, look at that. Allah promised this, and a few years later it's unfolding. Khalas, amantu billah. Allah's promise is coming to life. So when Allah Azza wa Jal afflicts you with a calamity, you got to remind yourself, didn't Allah promise you that? وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. Allah said that He will test you with fear and a loss of life, a loss of wealth, and so on. When you experience a calamity of loss of wealth or income or job, or that you have anxiety, fear, depression, whatever it is of the calamities that people experience today, stop and say, this is what Allah promised. And now your iman increases. And now your submission increases. Now I want to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. Because the worst thing you can do during a calamity is to avoid Allah Azza wa Jal's instructions and commands and start doing sins and shisha, right? Believing that this is what's going to grant me or release my stress during a calamity. That's what people do. And they think that this is decreasing their stress, dealing with it. No, it doesn't work that way. When you do a sin during a calamity, that's the worst thing you could be doing in a calamity. فإذا this is how we're going to look at it. Now, it should strengthen your iman, and you should trust that there is goodness in it. Then Allah Azza wa Jal decrees for a believer that which is good. Now, what if it rocks your iman? Now you recalibrate with this kind of understanding that I explained. Inshallah, it should not rock your iman. And if it does, you ask Allah Azza wa Jal for firmness and steadfastness. Another question coming here from a sister from India. Having few doubts in the morning and evening adhkar, not with your series, but with the book we have here in India. It has many dua. Can you tell me if it's necessary to read it all, or can we just continue with only your series, or is there any harm if we read it all? I don't know what series you're speaking about, but we did mention more than once in the lesson that there are people that collected and combined and gathered ahadith and adhkar and put them in a book and said, read these in the morning and the evening. And half of them, most of them have nothing to do with the morning and the evening adhkar. This is not allowed. This is a bid'ah. Such things should be thrown away. So for this sister and others, we say, download that app, inshallah. Dua, dhikr and dua, and you'll find what's authentic, bi'idhnillah, in that app. How much time we got left? 12 minutes? Okay. Because that concludes the questions that we wanted to prioritize, and they're the questions related to the adhkar. Is there any question from the floor here, from my brothers, that you have related only to the adhkar? Otherwise, we'll open up the next clip and we'll begin with the questions that had nothing to do with the adhkar. But the priority is the adhkar. Anyone? Adhkar? Jayyid. I think we took a good amount of questions and it would have answered whatever you might have had in your mind. Okay, so the first question that is unrelated to the adhkar, this is coming from a sister. She says, does name affect your personality? So does a person's name affect his personality? Allahu A'lam. There's no proof for this. There is certain incidents in when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would change people's names because their name was a horrible bad name. Like a woman was named Awsiyah. Her name was Awsiyah, a sinner. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam changes her name to a better name called, I think, Barra, which is righteousness. No, Awsi. No, it wasn't Barra. It was something else. Anyway, but of course, a bad name should be avoided. An evil name with a bad meaning should be avoided. And a sha'ir from a shu'ara, one of the shu'ara, he once did make a comment on this. He said that every time I observed the name of a person, I found that name, the characteristic of that name within that person's akhlaq. Could be, Allahu A'lam. If we say that a person's name can have an effect on his personality, then we say that from being optimistic, not as a standard rule that came in a hadith. So if someone is called, let's say, Adil means just. We say, inshallah, he turns out a person of justice, a man of justice. Yes, from that perspective, having high hope and optimistic in the name, from that perspective, there's no issue to believe, inshallah, that this person will live by his name. You call someone, that's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say the most beloved names to Allah, Abdullah or Abdul Rahman. Why? in hope that inshallah this person grows up to be an actual slave of Allah and a slave of Ar-Rahman subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from that perspective, yes, we'll say inshallah it has a good effect on their personality if we chose good names. Now, another question here. Brother says, is it okay to unite with innovation people? What are you going to unite with them on? There should be something common to unite. People of innovation, there's nothing to unite upon them. So even if you wanted to, you cannot. So as a result, try it. If it does work, let me know. The next question is, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is coming from a sister. Is it possible to get a transcript of the lecture about the 10 ways to be patient? I'm trying to learn the Arabic terminology, use it for. Inshallah, the transcript will come within a few months, inshallah. You'll find that on the Instagram page. There is a highlight up the top called transcribes. All the lessons that I've given that have been transcribed are put there. So that'll come later because that's a recent lecture. Also, the book, The 2 Paths to Migration and Happiness. Is there a PDF? طريق الهجرتين ودار السعادتين. I don't think it is being translated in English or English hard copy. I don't think it's translated. Allahu alam, you can check. The next question comes from a brother. Is it allowed to listen to the headphones while exercising, doing some sport? Permissible. Next question, brother is asking, may Allah, no, saying keep this confidential. Why? All right, they're going to take a long time. Now, next question. I've answered this before. Assalamu alaikum. I hope that you will answer my question. In our local mosque in Norway, we have an imam appointed by the government, not by Norwegian government, since he is appointed. He doesn't speak Norwegian nor English, so every Jum'ah between 1 and 2 khutbah, there is a translator who translates the first khutbah in Norwegian. He, the translator, stands up and moves a bit towards where the microphone is and starts translating, while the imam should only sit for a few seconds. Also, when he finishes, he moves back to his place while the imam starts his second khutbah. My concern is that this is an innovation and should be rejected or performed in another way that is performed. Any information about this topic? Now, in this manner that the brother mentioned, this is definitely an innovation, and this is not allowed for an imam to give a first khutbah, then to sit back, and for a second person to get up and translate as the imam is sitting. Then the translator sits down. Then the imam gets up and gives another khutbah. This is 3 khutbah now. This is most definitely an innovation. And in this form, in this manner, it is not allowed to do khutbah al-Jumu'ah in this way. Rather, the most preferred way is that if the vast majority of people understand English or understand Norwegian, whatever it is, then the khutbah from the very beginning should be that. That's the best. No, that's how we deal with this matter. Speak to the people in their language. One khatib, he does 2 khutbah and finished. If not, and he doesn't know any other language and he's the only khatib and there is a translator, then what we do is we say that the khatib should give the khutbah in his language, perhaps Arabic language, finish the first and second khutbah, and then pray after as-salat. And this has nothing to do with the khutbah now. The translator may get up and say, whoever would like to listen to a translation may join me and we'll translate. But this has nothing to do with khutbah. This is all after Salat al-Jumu'ah. If it's that, that will make it a little bit better than this innovation that was mentioned here. Now, next question is coming from a sister. I had days accumulated from previous Ramadan to owe before this Ramadan. I only managed 16 days this year. I still owe 12. I struggle a lot with asthma and fatigue. I feel it's still inexcusable and feel so guilty. Is this regarded as a sin? How much fidya do I pay? And inshallah, after Ramadan, I'll make them up immediately. So the person who has days that he needs to make up for the previous Ramadan, ideally, you have from last Ramadan to this Ramadan to make them up. If you did not make them up before the upcoming Ramadan, then you have to do them after this Ramadan. So she's saying 12 days. Let's say this is a woman that cannot fast anymore. Khalas. She'll fast Ramadan now, and after Ramadan, she'll make 12 days. Then there is khilaf between the ulama as to whether she is to pay an expiation for this, a fidya for this or not, which is to feed one poor person for every day she delayed more than a year. Some ulama said, no, this is not the case and that she just has to make up the day. And others said in addition to making up the day, she has to pay a penalty and feed a poor person for every day. That's a safer opinion. If you wanted to feed a poor person for every day you delayed beyond a year, then do so. Otherwise, if you just want to do the days, then you have to do those days and that's it. Now, another sister here is asking, Assalamu alaikum, is it not permissible to say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, but rather we should say Nabiyyina Muhammad? If we're saying it's about the salat, then in a salat don't say Sayyidina. In a salat you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Because the words that are to be said in the salat, they're tawqifiyah, they are intended for what they are. You cannot add, you cannot increase, you cannot decrease, and you cannot substitute. But if it's a general salat ala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, like now we're sitting, and we said Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, there's no issue in that. Then the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did say, Ana Sayyidu waladi Adam, I am the master of the son of Adam. So from that perspective, there is no issue now. Can I read from the Mus'haf or a Quran app during night prayers because I don't attend Taraweeh at the masjid? Naam, you're allowed to read from the Quran app or the Quran itself. Next question, the brother here is asking, I am working with night shift duty. So my afternoon prayer is daily skipped. I feel so embarrassed. Can I pray after Isha, pray Qada? Can I pray together, Dhuhr and Asr after Isha? Of course this is not allowed. No matter what situation you are in, the prayers must be prayed on their time. Inna as-salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. The prayers must be prayed on their time. And you cannot delay them. And this excuse of, what did he say? Night shift and that. Wherever a person can take a toilet break, then he can take a prayer break as well. Let's say a person was in desperate need of going to the bathroom. What is he going to do? Or is he going to say, Qada for my bathroom? Do that later? La. Right then and there. It doesn't matter who says yes or no, you got to go. So the same idea for as-salat, but have a bit more dignity and self-respect when it comes to as-salat. Respect yourself, respect the times of the salat, then you take your time out and you go and you establish your salat. If the job is difficult, doesn't allow you, whatever it is, perhaps it's time to think of Hadith and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, whoever leaves something for Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal would replace him with something much better. Now, and if you implement this hadith, I guarantee you that you will never fall into poverty. Because I don't know, until this very day, someone who has implemented this hadith, left his job for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, I don't know any example that he has fallen into poverty and a devastated state after implementing this hadith. There's always goodness. Now, the next question here we have, a sister is asking, if I am sick and I tell my parents to keep me in their dua, will it be considered as ruqyah? If yes, does it mean I am excluded from the 70,000 plus saved on the Day of Judgment? No, you can ask your parents to make dua for you, and that has nothing to do with the 70,000. Next question, the brother is asking, what is the ruling on a man shaving the body hairs such as arms and legs? It's permissible to shave them if they don't have any detrimental side effects. Next question, if there is side effects, then make him sick. And of course, it is not allowed also to shave them if a person is going to intend with this at-tashabbuh, imitating a woman and being like woman. Most definitely then in that case it won't be permissible. But some people sometimes are bothered or irritated in that case. I think there is no issue, inshaAllah. Another question here says, should I continue studying the seerah in Ramadan and watching Islamic lectures, or should I solely focus on reading the Quran? Shahru Ramadan is the month of the Quran. So you got to give more time to the Quran, because this is its time. This is its time. Ramadan is the time for the Quran. And do you have to cut everything else? No. Yani your seerah studies and watching Islamic lectures, that it's from the good deeds that are encouraged to be done throughout Ramadan and throughout a person's life. So if you did that and you gave extra time for the Quran, then do that. But if you are faced between two options only, I only have time, either do Quran or either continue with my seerah. And if I choose to do seerah, then I know I will not have time for the Quran. If you're faced by that choice, then yes, obviously, leave the seerah for this month and focus on the Quran. But if you're able to combine between the two, give some time here, and increase your time for the Quran, then that's a good advice to follow, inshaAllah. Another question here is coming from a sister. Where's that? 7 minutes? Like, last question we'll take. Is there any halal banks in Australia to buy a home on mortgage? To buy a home on mortgage. Wallah, Allahu Alam. I don't know the banks. I don't have any relationship with a bank. But what I say is this. I'll let you do something. If you're interested in such a matter, and a person is really facing a lot of difficulty with the rent and whatever it is, and it's becoming an issue here, I'll ask Allah SWT to grant relief to the believers. But if it becomes an issue and a person is trying to look into this option, wanting to exercise it, then the recommendation is this. Call these Islamic banks, this halal bank, whoever is declaring himself a halal bank, call the bank. Ask him this question. Say, brothers, do you have an active Sharia board that is active, it's alive, it monitors, and it audits the contracts and everything else? Is it active? Is it there? Is it busy? Does it overlook your work and your contracts, whether it's halal or not? If they do have an active Sharia board and it's working, and they audit these contracts and whatever it is, and they say to you it's permissible, khalas, it's permissible. What am I going to do? This is a people of expertise, the responsibility is upon them. These are inshallah people that are going to be God-fearing. This is what we're going to assume initially. I don't know who they are. And if that's the case and they've given an approval for it, then khalas, halal, halal. But if you call and you ask the question and they say, well, we had the active board at the very beginning when we opened, but now they don't longer exist, they don't longer exist or associate with us, or the Sharia board is not active, they don't monitor, they don't audit these contracts and so on, they keep away. Then keep away altogether. So this is, I think, what is best in terms of how you're going to manage this situation. Now, wallahu a'lam. Khalas, we're going to stop here. We ask Allah SWT to grant us goodness and success and acceptance. We ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and our shortcomings. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.